First, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
All right, so where do you want to start? You want to start with that?
Sure.
You want to start with the audio of you and you hammering away at some people?
Sure.
All right, so this was set the scene for this real quick, and I'll play the first 60 seconds or so. I mean, you went on for 15 minutes, but
Yeah, I could have went on for 15 hours.
Yeah.
So it's from Thursday, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was the report was released Thursday at noontime. Of course, we had it in the morning, and the governor did a press conference, and I was actually in meetings, and then the press texted me and said, hey, or my press guy said, hey, can you come over here? So I go over there. What happened was the press was like angry that they didn't have the carcasses of 85 police officers
Right.
to give to people. And they were sort of badgering the governor about it a little bit. So when he got done, they just literally flipped all the cameras around to where I was standing. I was like, hey, you have some stuff to say? I said, yeah, get set up. Let's go.
Yeah.
And we went.
all right.
Your reaction to the report that came out and the governor and the commissioner's words just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, certainly, and good afternoon, everybody. Listen, I'm as thrilled as everybody to find out that there was no widespread integrity issues, no widespread racial profiling or attempts to cover up racial profiling by our state police. That's a narrative that was pushed out of this building 7 months ago in the media, and that narrative has been debunked today. And I'm certainly glad that that's happened and that the state police can rest a little bit easier tonight, especially 70-some-odd troopers that have spent the last 8 months of their life wondering if they're going to be a target of a witch hunt and lose their profession, the profession, their families. I can't imagine the mental anguish that they've been through.
Well, let me jump in. Essentially, you go a little crazy, and I'll put this link up on our Facebook feed. You guys can take a look at the entire 15 minutes. But in a sort of summary here, you were pretty much on the cop side from day one. Let's let this thing play out, and here you go. We see it all these months later, and you were right.
Well, that's because I know the systems and I know how it works. And what they did, and I said that then, and I'll say that now. What they did was they took the fact that data wasn't matching up across two systems and jumped to a conclusion that police officers are engaged in widespread racial profiling in a massive conspiracy to cover it up, which of course was not true. I knew it wasn't true then. Excuse me. What we did have, and we know that it's in the reports and multiple reports, is you had a few troopers that were creating traffic stops that never actually existed to make it look like they were busier than they were. There were troopers that were saying when they cleared a traffic stop out, saying, okay, I gave an infraction. They actually gave a verbal warning simply to make it look like they were a little busier. And I don't defend that. I don't defend police officers who are not honest in what they're doing and they do things with malicious intent. But first off, even though they weren't doing things correctly, it wasn't because of racial profiling. It was because of the, again, trying to make themselves look busier to their supervisors. Not that it makes it right, but it wasn't racial profiling. And I think that, people have to have a big understanding of what goes on within computer systems. And you don't have to understand policing, just any systems. A lot of times to move on from one screen to the next, you have to fill a field, whatever that required field may be. So for an example, I handle evidence. That's one of my responsibilities as a police officer. And NIBRS, which is a National Incident-Based Reporting System, gets reports from police departments based on case file and whatnot, and there's requirements. So when you seize property, the system requires that you assign a value to it. So for example, when a police officer seizes a bunch of drug paraphernalia, they may seize what's called a push rod, which may be something as simple as a piece of a paper clip that somebody has fashioned into a stick and they use it to push crack down a crack pipe. Well, it's drug paraphernalia, so it gets seized. You have to assign a value to that. So you put $1. Is it worth $1? Is anybody in the world going to give you $1 for that thing? No. Are you intentionally falsifying records? Well, I guess you can make that argument, but how else can you ever get through, right? So you got to kind of take these things in context. And you also have to take into account that, these are human beings that involved in human error at times. So, for example, most of us throughout January have wrote 2023, maybe even on official documents, because it's been our habit to write 23 and we're switched to a new year. Well, if you have troopers that generally write infractions and they're generally going through those drop downs and just clicking, click, white male infraction, boom, boom, boom. And infraction is their habit. And then, once in a while they give a verbal warning and out of habit they hit infraction. These things can happen. And I told Ken Barone back then, and I said it on your show, you can never account for all of that. And what he had was evidence to show that the data that he's getting is probably not as accurate as he thought it was. And I said then that he was right, and I say now that he is correct. The reasons for that are not widespread racial profiling in an attempt to cover it up, which was the narrative that was put out. And that's what I told him and Bill Dyson in July. I said, listen, we'll see how this plays out. But my fear today is that we are taking data which tells a story and not the story, and we are telling, and we've made up the story and we've put it out. So much so that if you look at the Connecticut Mirror's Facebook page and you look at the comments, overwhelmingly it's like, well, this is, 80 troopers did this wrong, boom, 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 boom. They're not even reading the report. The narrative is sold. These guys and gals have been convicted in the court of public opinion. The state police agency has been convicted in the court of public opinion, and there it is. And you had a caller, and I don't remember who it was, call me and back then and say, are we going to say this entire thing is just a computer problem? And my response to that was, no, we know a few people were engaged in a bit of misconduct, but I think largely that is, and that's what came out, is that those systems don't talk to each other. Another important part of this is, and I said this in that press conference, and I will be working over the next few months to rectify this, and it's a shame because we could have been working to rectify this in the last 7 months, but we had to, put out this anti-police narrative first, but now we can actually fix the problem. Police departments, police officers in this state have to go through recertification every 3 years, and there's certain you have to do a certain amount of juvenile, you have to do a certain amount of use of force. If we in the legislature are going to be this reliant on these numbers, then I think it's imperative that the police officers have periodic ongoing training, and it doesn't have to be a formal training, but at least a reminder of what these things are, because most cops in the state of Connecticut, they don't realize that they're documenting that data for this purpose. They've only seen that be used to show their own activity, so that's what they think it's for. That's only important because if you have a police officer who is out stopping cars and dispatch is a little bit busy and they're writing a ticket and they don't necessarily quote unquote create a traffic stop to do it, in their mind, okay, it's no big deal. I'm not going to get credit for this stop when the sergeant runs the numbers at the end of the month, but I'm busy enough. I'm not worried about it. They don't realize they just thwarted the numbers because they don't work in that realm, that they don't see the back end. They're not data collectors by nature. They're investigators. They collect evidence to figure out what happened or make a criminal case. This is not their job, and we've charged them with this. And the last part of it that I think we need to address is you have police departments in this state who have, and I know this to be fact, have directed their officers to report in a way that is opposite, and this is not intentional, in a way that is opposite of what the Connecticut Racial Profiling Prohibition Project wants. For example, they identify, when you do this, you have to say, was my stop a spot check, general, or blind? And they define general and blind. Well, I know of a few police departments that define general and blind opposite because of some Scrivener's error somewhere along the way when it went into the policy. And these are things that we need to drill down on if we're going to rely on these numbers to make them more accurate.
State Rep Greg Howard with us. All right, so let me ask you this. The essence of this, the crux of this, if you could surmise it for the person driving to work who doesn't want the clutter, what's the bottom line to what they found?
The bottom line is that we found that there are systematic issues in the reporting, that the malfeasance by the troopers in this entire thing was at a minimum at best, and those who were engaged in malfeasance, their intent had nothing to do with racial profiling.
All right, State Rep Greg Howard is with us. If you guys want to call in, you can, 860-464-9490. And if you have a question or two about this or something else, is there anything else you want to add on that one? Well, I know you should be kind of furious. Furious, I guess furious in a sense where the public was so willing and ready to turn their back on you because of this narrative.
They were spoon-fed that,
I know they were,
right?
But still, yeah, I agree with you. You're right.
We know what makes me, if I'm furious about anything, I'm furious about two things. I'm furious about what this is going to do. Because what we've basically told our state troopers is, if you're out doing car stops the right way, doing everything we've trained you and told you to do, we will still engage in 9 months of putting you through mental anguish.
Yeah.
Yep, you'll get exonerated at the end. But for 9 months, What happens to you for 9 months if you don't know if you're going to lose your job that you've put 16, 17 years into, that you feed your kids with, that you put a
Right.
roof over your head with? For 9 months, those guys, I mean, how engaged are they at their kids' baseball games, or with their wives or their husbands? How engaged are they, when that's hanging over their head? And what we've told our state police is one way to ensure that doesn't happen to you, go out and do nothing.
Right.
But you know what? The limited car stops that we have right now is undoubtedly leading to our fatal crash rate that is seeing record numbers. So that's one thing that makes me furious.
Yeah.
Because as you know, public safety is a passion, right? It's something I put my life into. And if we're going to do anything to detriment public safety, it's going to hit a nerve with me.
I was all over the place yesterday, and I wound up not actually getting back to my house like literally 1:30 last night. So I was driving on the road like at 12:30, 1 o'clock last night. I went home on 95, and I'm going like 75, right? Maybe 76.
Like you're standing still.
Yeah. Well, like dude, I'm telling you, they're
don't have to tell
going
me.
by me.
I know.
Like it's the Indy 500.
I know.
Like I couldn't, and it's one after another. Zoom, zoom, zoom. I'm like, I can't believe there's not more fatalities.
So let me say
on
the
the
second
highways.
thing that makes me furious, and I want to make a comment about that. The second thing that makes me furious is we sat there in July 26th. We had a forum because we need answers. This report has come out from Ken Barone, and we want answers. Answers. So we had a forum.
Yep.
Well, now we got answers. And when is he? Now I want answers from him.
Right.
Where's our next forum? And I've asked the chairman of the Public Safety Committee that. When is our next forum? When are we going to sit down and say to the Connecticut Racial Profiling and Prohibition Project, what level of responsibility do you have for this narrative that you put out against our state agency? What level do you have?
Right.
What processes did you go through? And what can we do to make sure this never happens again? Because the governor did say that multiple times in his press conference. We have to take steps to make sure this never happens again. I don't even know what this is.
Right.
What is this? What is this? I don't even know, because to me, this is putting out a false narrative. But to your other point about the speed on the highways, three things contribute to fatal accidents higher than anything else: speed, distracted driving, intoxicated driving. All right, that's straight from NHTSA. That's not my opinion. That's straight from NHTSA. Now, when you consider, trying to say this the best way, when you consider the amount of speed that's on the highway and the lack of enforcement that's going on, folks, the fact that we have a high number of fatal accidents right now, my colleagues are getting pressure on. So they feel pressure to do something because it's 2024. What's happening in November, right? So they need something to put on a mailer. So now there's this big push to lower the blood alcohol content. Well, that is not going to fix any problem, and I'll tell you why. First of all, in the state of Connecticut, if you get arrested for DWI, the police officer has not given you a breathalyzer or figured out scientifically through a chemical test what your BAC is until you are already under arrest. There's no portable breath test. Once you take that breath test, you're already under arrest. The only time that's a little bit different is if you get into a crash and go to the hospital and does a search warrant for the blood and whatnot. But those are rare cases. General DWI case, you get pulled on the side of the road, the officer runs you through a battery of tests. And those tests are standardized field sobriety tests. They are standard to a scientific standard. They are tested to a scientific standard of 0.10. So if you exhibit a certain number of clues based on the officer's training, so to put that in layman's terms, if you fail the test,
Right.
then science would indicate that you are above 0.10. If you don't, quote unquote, fail those tests, there's no probable cause to arrest you. So if you're at 0.05 and pass the test, or 0.06 or 0.07 or 0.08 even, and 0.09 and pass the test, you're not getting arrested. You're getting back in your car and you're driving away. So that's not the issue. And when my colleagues say, well, we have infrastructure issues, we have to widen the highways, we need better guardrails. I'm not saying all these things are bad. What I'm telling you is in 2019, we did not have this sort of fatal crash rate. And in 2022, we did. And in 2023, we did. And two things changed from 2019 to 2022 and 2023. One, we sent our police officers home. We told them in this state, we don't want you out doing work. We didn't quite say it like that, but that was the net effect of the things that we did. And two, we legalized marijuana. Those are the two things that changed, right? So when you're going through and say, okay, we were on this path and now we're on this path, where did we turn? Well, we turned here. Okay, those were the two things. So I just want everybody to know that if any legislator or politician running for office in November tells you that lowering the BAC or changing the guardrails of the roads or, you know, different color lighting or any of that stuff is the solution to what we have, hold them to it and say, really, what about the fact that we legalized marijuana? We know it's an impairment. We know it because we made it illegal to smoke marijuana and drive. Yet we told our police officers you can't pull people over when you see them doing that. And our traffic stop numbers are at completely dismal rates compared to what they used to be. And see what they say to that.
Again, Greg Howard is with us. Let me ask you one more question because I know a lot of people have been asking about this. And now that I got you here, what do you know about the Khan case? Rep Khan, right? That's her name.
Yeah. You know what?
And how the 3 cops got
to be honest with you, I kind of forgotten about that. When you said Khan, I didn't think about who you're talking about. I don't have the update, but I should, and I will get it.
Well, because I know there was a story that popped while you were gone, and I don't mean to spring on you, but I guess the cops got a slap on the wrist for, I guess, procedural stuff. But what she had said is still cloaked in darkness, whether or not it's true or not.
So let me qualify my next statement saying I have not read that statement, but I will actually go get that. In fact, I meant to do that a while back, and to be perfectly honest, it sort of slipped my mind. So this is a big concern that I have. I forget the gentleman's name that called in a couple weeks ago that got arrested for sending the email. His name.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember
His
either.
name escapes me.
Yeah.
That has been really, really, really bothering me. And I'll tell you why. And it plays right into what you just said. It doesn't bother me. Look, I don't agree with what he did, and I said this to him, and I said this on the air then. I don't agree with his position on the topic, right? I don't think he was right. What bothers me is that we have really, I don't know if I could say that word, really been detrimental to the judicial system for politics. It's very evident to me what happened there. We had, in my opinion, a police officer, a state's attorney, and a judge all sign an arrest warrant. Well, 2 of them signed an affidavit, 1 a warrant. One an affidavit. Well, they all signed the affidavit. I guess the state's attorney and the judge all signed a warrant. Anyway, all put their signature on this to arrest this guy because they didn't want the political pushback. That's my opinion.
Right.
That will remain my opinion. And he sent an email that said if it'll be hell to pay if a teacher dyed her hair, right?
Something to that effect, yeah.
The crux of it. They'll be held to pay. There's a Supreme Court case, and if you don't know anything about law, you know there's a thing called precedent. There's a Supreme Court case that came out of New London where an attorney was representing the town of Waterford, and that attorney's son had been involved in a very significant car crash a bit before this particular incident took place. In fact, that the attorney's son was left permanently disabled and almost died as a result. It was a major car crash. And the attorney represents the town of Waterford. He sues this gentleman. The gentleman comes out of court after losing. The town won. And he says to the attorney, what happened to your son is going to happen to you, and I'm going to be there to watch it. Right to his face in the midst of a verbal tirade. New London PD arrests him. He gets charged with breach of peace, threatening. He gets convicted of breach of peace and threatening. Goes through the process. In 2014, a case called State v. Kryger, the Connecticut Supreme Court overturned that conviction and said that it is protected speech. That threat, that so-called threat, and that statement that he made was not ominous enough to violate the law because it wasn't obvious and immediate. Well, if that was not obvious and immediate, then they'll be held to pay in the context that email was sent. Clearly isn't. So this isn't just my opinion. Because somebody could say, well, held to pay could have a lot of meanings. Well, you have to go by legal precedent, right? And legal precedent, State v. Kryger, is that is protected speech. And the cops know that, the state's attorneys know that, and the judge knows that.
Right.
So go over to Khan. So if those guys, and I'll look into that, if those guys got a slap on the wrist for some, off procedural thing that probably goes on every single day, then it's done for political reason. And that is a major concern I have in this country. Major concern that we are making, that everybody who is charged with the decision-making power for a certain thing is saying, well, we're all in agreement that we should do X, but boy, it's going to be a media frenzy if we do that. Maybe we'll just do Y and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, and I will tell everybody listening, I will never do that. I say this, how many times have I said this? My integrity and willing to say what needs to be said may cost me my next election.
Right.
But my next election will never cost me my integrity.
When's it start today? Today or tomorrow?
What, the session?
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday.
It's always a Wednesday.
Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm always ready. I'm always ready.
All right.
Calendar's ready to go, and Shayna's ready. she knows she's double duty for 3 months here.
All right, brother. Thank you, man. Greg
Thanks, man.
Howard,
Good
State
to be
Rep.
here.